to think I was this little kid, and a Jewish little kid, I had to walk 3 blocks to school, I had a yarmulke on my head, and to be spit on, and to have a knife pointed at me, to be asked for money. It was something that, it was unbelievable for me.
This is Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion, politics, and art.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berlinerblau of Georgetown University, and you're watching Faith Complex. Joining us today is Mr. Martin Lemelman, author of the recent graphic memoir, 2 Cents Plain, My Brooklyn Boyhood. Mr. Lemelman, welcome to Faith Complex.
I'm happy to be here.
In the Brooklyn of my youth in the 70s, there was a store called Chadish, which I think is the last living link to your father's candy store. And Chadish was very, very similar. You got your egg cream, your cherry Coke. And then there was this back room, the mysterious back room. Your book takes us into those back rooms.
That was a place where my father stored the cardboard boxes with the schaira, the merchandise. And they were filled with toys and candy, etc. And even now, 50 years later, if I smell cardboard, it brings me back to the back rooms of Teddy's candy store.
Now, we learn in 2 Cents Plain that your father actually wrote a letter to Joseph Stalin and actually got a response?
This was coming to the end of the war, and he told me he wrote a letter to Stalin asking to go back to the town of Rajville where he came from to see if there was anybody left of his family. And he said Stalin wrote back to him and let him out. Now, they weren't letting people out of the Russian army. They were in there. But he got out and he walked to his hometown, and that's why he loved Stalin, because
possibly
he let him
the
go.
Only Jewish person that Stalin let out of Russia alive.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. And so he loved Stalin from then, I think.
Now, the thematics of the book darken considerably when you discuss your father. You describe life with him as a funeral almost every week, with Daddy as master of ceremonies.
Well, in America, he wanted to be successful, but he always felt like he was a stranger in a strange land. He really couldn't adapt. He felt comfortable in Europe. He had land in Europe, and here in America, in the candy store, he didn't feel like he was successful. And in addition, during the war, he became an alcoholic, and so he drank a lot. And that he would sit at a table or sit with his cigarette and with his vodka, and he would just rant and rave. And it was very painful as a child to listen to this, and he would say, "Why are we here with cockroaches? We could have been with cows."
One of your uncles in 2 Cents Plain says, "To go through the fire we went through," meaning the Holocaust, "and to be a normal person, there is not a generation that can do it." I think your text really deals with the second generation, the children of the survivors. Can that generation be normal? Can we be normal, the children of survivors?
Well, first of all, sitting in a studio for 4 years and drawing and writing, is that normal? But I think going back when I was a child and I had a problem, I knew that I couldn't rely on my mother, to go to my mother to ask her for help. Because I knew that if I hurt myself and wanted to be comforted by her, I would end up having to comfort her. When I spoke to my mother years later, when I was writing thinking about the first book, she said, "Mein Körper zieht tumid," and that's in Yiddish, is my body is boiling always. And so there was always this nervousness about her that I understood. And so I think that kind of translated it for me. And you know, I'm basically very happy to be alone. I almost force myself to be social. And so I think there is this kind of second generation, I don't want to say
malaise.
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 Yeah, I think that's probably a good word.
One of the most touching scenes in 2 Cents Plain is towards the end, where we have images of you being really harassed by African-American kids that are coming into your neighborhood in Brownsville. Then there's a very, very interesting quote when you say, "Brownsville became another Poland for us. How do you think about that a few years after you've written the book and decades after you've had the experience?
Well, I mean, to think, I was this little kid, and a Jewish little kid. I had to walk 3 blocks to school. I had a yarmulke on my head, and to be spit on, and to have a knife pointed at me, to be asked for money. It was something that it was unbelievable for me, and it was absolutely unbelievable for my parents, who came to America to start a new life in a free country, and here things that this anti-Semitism is happening again.
All right, I have an admission to make about graphic novels as a kind of straight-ahead vanilla student of literature. I don't think I know how to read graphic novels. I'm always looking at the text, not the images. What do you do with people like me?
The text and the art are wedded together. They bring the narrative forward. It's different than writing, but if you think, do you close your eyes when you watch a movie? I mean, do you just listen to the dialogue? You need both to work, and I think in graphic novels and memoirs, and mine, I have to talk about mine, it's really important to look at the pictures. There's also one other thing. Being an artist, being a yeshiva boy and a Talmudic student, I also add symbolism to my artwork, and that's important. It's not so much important to kind of bring the story forward, but as an artist, it kind of fulfills this desire to create an interesting image.
I was looking for linguistic symbolism, and I found some, but what you showed me before we started filming today is there was all this visual symbolism, which I simply wasn't trained to look at. Tell us about Godzilla. As we showed
my mother felt bad because she wouldn't let my brother watch King Kong on the $1 Million movie because it scared me. So she felt bad, and she decided to take my brother to the Strauss Theater to see Godzilla, and he loved horror movies. But if you look at the picture, on the marquee, you can only see the word, they're going to this horror movie, this monster movie called God, because the rest of the word is hidden by a sign, a traffic sign. My brother's going to see his horror movie, but then my mother has her issues, and she's going to see her horror movie.
Many of the images are really visually stunning. I like your shots of the aging process, the triptych of your dad and then of your mom. Tell us about those images.
Well, I think that goes along with the symbolism of my art, and the whole book is about cycle of life. And so those drawings, and I have a drawing of myself aging and my brother aging, and it's the cycle of life, but it's also symbolic of 2 Cents Plain Brooklyn, because it's also the cycle of how the neighborhood changed as well. And so I think that to me was very important.
The final scene of the book really touched me, with the young African-American kid looking up at the bird. Tell us a little bit about that scene.
Well, I was kind of ending the book, but I didn't have an ending. And so in September of 2009, I decided that I would go back to the old neighborhood. I went back a few times before, and I saw the shell of the store, and I saw destruction there. But I decided to go in September, and I went there, and my store was gone. It was erased. We moved later on in the 60s to this apartment building, and that was gone. And so I thought, was this a dream? And then I went to 448 Howard Avenue, which was where my store was, and I saw this little Afro-American boy, and I thought, you know what? I had my story, there's a cycle of life, and I went to Brooklyn and I grew up there, and I thought, well, you know what kind of experience will he have? Maybe in 50 years he's going to be writing his story about 448 Howard Avenue.
We've been speaking with Martin Lemelman, author of 2 Cents Plain, a book as chock full of delights and treats as his father's candy counter back in old Brooklyn. Mr. Lemelman, thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you for having me. It really was a lot of fun. Thank you. Thank you. I enjoyed it.